welcome back. We're moving on now to part 3 of week 7. So what I'm looking for your part 3 basically is for, I'd just like to explain your activities, but also I'd like to take a look at some simple corrections, because of course, as always, you should be thinking about how to make your projects, make your writing, make your skills in English better. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take a look at some simple issues, and then we're going to work on paragraph practice, and I'm going to talk very briefly about the spectrum scans. So your week 7 assignment, basically, the next step, so the first step is going to be for you to talk about yourself, and then the next step is for you to prepare some interview questions. So what's interesting for you? What do you like? What are you interested in that you want to ask your family members about or your classmates about? I will leave it to you to decide who to speak to, but ideally, it's better for you to... It's probably easier for you if you do it in English, but I will leave it up to you. If you want to work in Korean and then translate and use it in English when you do the assignment for me, perfectly fine. I'm quite happy with that. Do be careful with translation though, because remember that it's not always easy to directly translate from Korean to English. But anyways, focus on your frequency adverbs. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to prepare 5 interview questions and 2 follow-up questions for each of those. So we're looking at 15 in total. So some examples I've given you here. So I'm looking on slide 30. I've given you some examples like here. So number 1 question is, do you wake up early? Okay, so we're asking a yes/no question so we can see where we stand. Now, I guess to start with, my question is why? Why would I start with a closed question for an interview? So if you can think about it, I'll ask... A simple way to think about it is, for example, I have one of my students here, her name is Chaewon, and my first question to her is, why do you smoke? Can you see now why it's not good to start with an open question? It's better to start with a closed question. Perhaps I should review to make sure everyone is clear about what those types of questions are. So a closed question, which I usually close my fist, and especially for elementary school students, I use a closed fist so that they understand that, is a question that you can only answer yes or no to. So usually these questions begin with verbs, and these are to establish whether the person does that or doesn't do that, or whether they know that or they don't know that. So questions like, do you, have you, were you, are you? Okay, all of these questions are all considered closed questions because the only answers you can give basically are yes or no. The trick with those questions is the verb that you hear is the verb you should answer with. So I've noticed that often students like to say simply, they give a one-word answer. They say yes or no. But especially for you as future teachers, I really strongly recommend that instead of yes or no, if you want to shorten your answer, just give the verb. Okay? So for example, if someone says, do you eat spaghetti? And you say, I do, rather than yes. Because if you use the grammar, then it helps your students a lot more. Anyways, so if you can see with my example with Chaewon, is if I say, why do you smoke? What does that imply? What does that show? It shows that I know she smokes, but actually I don't know that. So this is why we start with a closed question, is to find out yes or no, okay? And also what that person thinks about whatever it is we're talking about. So once we've established whether they do something or don't do something, we can then ask questions about their answers. So for example, if I ask Chaewon and I say, do you smoke? And she says, yes, I do. Then I can ask questions about her smoking. For example, how often do you smoke? How many cigarettes do you smoke? When did you start smoking? Okay, these are all possible questions. If, however, Chaewon answers, no, I don't, then again, I have a basis for my next questions, my follow-up questions. So I could ask, oh, why don't you smoke? Or do you not like smoking, perhaps? Something like that. Or I can change the subject and talk about something else entirely. What are your hobbies? What do you like to do after school? Something like that. So what I've done here is for your week 7 assignment, I've given you some examples of your interview questions. So I've given you 2 here. Now I, of course, would much prefer that you choose your own questions, but anyways, you've got some examples here. So I chose, do you wake up early and do you always go to bed late? Now, if I start with, do you always go to bed late? That means I'm working from the first question and using that for the second question. So essentially you have 2 ways of dealing with these questions. Number 1, you can just choose 5 different questions. Do you wake up early? Do you go out on Fridays? Do you live in Suncheon? Do you like the summer or the winter? And do you drive? Okay, so there's my 5 possible questions. There's no relationship between the questions. They're just 5 random questions I want to ask somebody. But however, there might be another way of doing it. You might start, which is what I did here. You might begin with, do you wake up early? And then once your partner answers and your partner goes, no, or they say, I don't, then we ask a follow-up question and we say, oh, well, when do you get up? What time do you go to bed? And your partner then answers those questions. And then we work on that. So now we know that our partner does not wake up early, so we ask another question. So do you always go to bed late? Okay, so we ask, do you always go to bed late? They say, I do. So now we know, oh, okay, they go to bed late all the time. So why? What's going on? What time do you go to bed? So remember that whenever we're using the do you, it implies usually normally. So what time do you go to bed? Oh, I go to bed at 2 a.m. What? Okay, so I remember I had a student before who always went to bed at 4 a.m. So my next question would be, what do you do before you go to bed? You know, maybe they play games, or perhaps they have a friend in the USA, they like to chat with them because of the time difference, something along those lines. So you have a variety of ways to approach the interview, but what's really important is that you think about your questions beforehand so that when it comes to the interview, you can ask the person whatever you wish. So this is the next step for your week 7 assignment. So we're looking for as many different questions as possible. I'd rather you not repeat them because part of this is the practice of using do you in a question and then writing down your answers and using frequency adverbs and putting them in the correct place in a sentence. Now, I would like to move on here and talk about, once more, some issues that I'm still seeing repeated all the time. So I'm going to repeat again. Please, please, please take a look at slide 31 and figure out why is comma this correct, but comma this is wrong. Did you get it? So I'm hoping you can see that the reason why is because after a comma, it's always a small letter, not the big letter, okay? So if it's a comma, then we have this with a small t, that is correct. If we have a comma and a capital T, then it is incorrect, okay? Because a comma is just a pause in a sentence. It's not a finish for a sentence. Except, of course, if you're talking about someone's name, because a name is always going to have a capital letter, or if you talk about yourself and you use the word I feel blah, 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 I always go to school at, I always go to school by bus, something like that. Moving on. So I've now moved on to slide 32, and what I'd like to do is ask you, what is wrong with these questions? You know, I really like this because I'm hoping you like this as well, because it tends to encourage you to think about things and work them out in your head rather than me just give you the answers. But of course, because this is video format, you could just fast forward and find the answers yourself. So what I'm going to ask you to do is pause the video here and think about the questions, see if you can figure out what is wrong with these 2 sentences. Okay, and I'm going to continue. Of course, if you need more time, please pause the video. So why not? Why not? Why not these sentences? So we have Jaewon always wake up early. Dang, why? And then we have he is always get up at 6 a.m. Dang, why? So we take a look first and we have, of course, Jaewon is a name. And how do we show a name in English? Capital letters. We need the capital W for Jaewon to show that this is a name. Because of course, won with a small w is Korean currency. It's the money unit of Korea in English, right? W-O-N. So Jaewon always wakes up early. So remember also, because Jaewon is a young man, then we would say he wakes. Remember, he, she, it, always plus S in present tense. So in our next sentence, we have he is always get up at 6 a.m. Dang, why? Too many verbs. Okay, so we've got is and we got get up. So which one do we want to focus on? We want to focus on the get up because we're talking about the time. Wake up. So he always get up at 6 a.m. Is that correct? Dang, it is not correct. Why? And we're looking back to, again, subject, and we're matching. Subject with the verb, he always gets up at 6 a.m. So do please, 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 please be very, very careful when you're writing about your interview this week, because you're going to be writing in what's called the third person. So talking about your partner, he or she. Now, part of my purpose for us doing this is because according to studies, for English as a foreign language students, which is what you are, it is probably the most difficult level, the most difficult for students to grasp and use well is this third person, which is he gets, and adding that S. If you can add that S when you're writing and you're thinking about it, dynamite. That is excellent. Very, very, very good. Very high level. If you can do that when you're speaking, you are fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. So this is part of our work this semester, is for us to focus on the third person, about he or she and that S. So we're talking about the third person. So what we're going to move on to now is your paragraph practice, okay? So the first part of the week 7 assignment was for you to write about yourself. The second part is to write down some interview questions and follow-up questions, which you can do as you're conducting the interview if you wish. I suggest strongly that you're better off to think of possible questions before and then adapt them as you're writing. And then your next step is going to be to write about the interview. So this is our paragraph practice for this week. Please do not forget about what we have studied so far, because this is a building process and you should be using all of what we have studied, what we've learned together whenever you're writing, okay? And this includes outside of my class. Anytime you're writing in English, you should follow these rules. These are very practical, very good English rules. So your week 7 assignment is you have chosen your partner. You have interviewed about that partner. What I want you to do is to write about what you learned. Now, the same as before, you have to decide what is interesting. What did you find interesting? What did you like to learn about from your partner? And also you can choose to ask questions about things you know are interesting about that person if you know that person well. For example, the student who spoke about his mom likes playing table tennis. If you know your mom plays table tennis and you want to interview your mom, you can find out how often she plays table tennis. You can find out how good she is. You can find out how often she buys new shoes, how often she has to buy a new racket, and these types of questions, so you can get more information which might be interesting for you. Basically, interviews are open, so it is your choice about what questions you want to ask to get that interesting information. So once you have the interview, once you've chosen all your questions and you get all the answers, now we need to think about, okay, so we did this interview, we got some interesting answers. Actually, maybe you got a few interesting answers, so you need to ask more questions. Or perhaps you have so much interesting information, that means you have to choose 3 details that you think were very interesting and discuss them. Remember that part of our point is the frequency adverb, so you should be using a minimum, I would say, of about 6 frequency adverbs, minimum. More? Excellent. So what I want you to do is to choose 3 details from your interview. If you don't have 3, keep asking questions. 5 is basically a minimum. If you want to ask more questions, that's fantastic as well. Don't forget to follow the rules that we have studied. You're still following the same format where you're using your titles. Please remember to use capital letters. Underneath the title to the right, you're writing your student number and your name. And remember, your name should be following the English style pattern. Given name first, family name second. And you should be using capital letters for every name that is part of your name. Also, we need to include those adverbs of frequency, so please try your best, and once you have finished, review. Go back, look over the paragraph, and count how many frequency adverbs there are. So essentially, for your week 7 assignment, we're going to be looking at you to submit it before Sunday, October 11 at 12 a.m. Please remember that if you hand in your assignment late, that means you are absent from the class. If you do not hand in the assignment, it means that you are absent and you will not get any participation points, okay? So essentially, if you do not hand in an assignment, you lose about 3% per assignment. So do your best, get it in on time. Please remember as well that we're looking for a 10-sentence paragraph, and we want to keep the paragraph form. So when you write your first 2 introduction sentences, put the period. Detail 1 sentence should come right after that period, so that we keep the same. It's one piece of writing, not 1 sentence, 2 sentence, and then next line, another one. So also, I would like you for next week, please, to prepare book. Okay, so I would like you to find an English book that you like. Think about why you like it. So I would like you to choose probably 3 different points that you think are important. Maybe 5 points would be good. Why did you like it? Maybe you like the cover or the characters, or you heard a lot about it, or it was recommended, it's a movie. I don't know, many different reasons. What I would also like you to do, please, is to make sure that you can find the citation information for your book. So I'm looking now, I'm on slide 36. So for the new book that you're choosing, so it should be a different one to what you have already looked at. I'd like to make sure that you have the citation information. So if you use like Aladdin Books, or you use a bookstore from the internet, just make sure that you screenshot the information or copy and paste the information maybe to a WordPerfect file. What you need to find is once again the author who wrote the book, the title of the book, the publishing company who published the book, when it was published, and where it was published. So that's about it. Also, please don't forget that you have your 3 scans from the Spectrum Language Arts Grade 4 book. So that is it. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will speak to you in about a week's time. Bye-bye. Have a great day.